Welcome back. Now, Police Minister Bheki Cele returned to Riverlea today to brief residents about interventions put in place to curb illegal mining and criminal activities. Now, he confirmed that since Monday, special police units made 194 arrests, with the majority of those being undocumented foreign nationals. Last weekend, the community was shaken by the discovery of 5 bodies believed to be of Zama Zamas, leading to residents closing the busy Main Reef Road in protest. Now, for more on this conversation, we are joined by independent economic analyst and commentator Bongani Mahlangu. Mahlangu, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for your time. Now, the supply of labor from foreign markets seems to be what attributes towards this growing economy of Zama Zamas. And this is often put on our porous borders and a weakened immigration system. Should we be able to tighten our borders? Would we be able to solve the issue around illegal mining?
Greetings to you and also greetings to the viewers at home. So to start with the last question, yes, immigration control is a problem. But however, even if you had the best immigration control and the best border system in the world, you'd still have people that want to come to South Africa, and those people will end up as Zama Zamas. And the case is because if you look into SADC particularly, you find that the Southern African Development Community is characterized by low to middle income. You find that there is extensive stagnation, high unemployment, inequality, increasing population, increasing poverty within the region generally. You find that there is social, political, and economic instability in countries such as Zimbabwe, in part countries such as Lesotho, in part countries such as Mozambique. And then you find that the only country that is some beacon of light within the region is South Africa. So South Africa, with all its problems, relatively it is stable socially, it is stable politically, it is stable economically. So then that becomes a pull factor, or those become pull factors. And what I've said initially become then push factors. So ordinarily people will want to move from such areas and move to areas where there is some level of stability. And that is what then happens in the South Africans' immigration case, that people are pushed by these factors where they are and they come to South Africa and they will find a way to get into the country. So then that then means if South Africa's development happens in isolation of the region, and South Africa contributes significantly to the region, every time South Africa does well, the region does well. If South Africa does bad, the region does bad. And this has been proven by the African Development Bank statistics. And also South Africa contributes a lot, even if you look into the Southern African power pool in terms of electricity. If you look into the Southern African Customs Union, you look into SADC and also other entities as well. It is South Africa that contributes immensely significantly to those entities. So that's why South Africa then attracts a lot of people. So South Africa's development in isolation of the development of the region, in isolation of development of the continent, will always be problematic, because then it will mean that the immigration issue will not get resolved. And then what then happens is that you find that immigration then provides cheap labor. In this case, in context of Zama Zamas, you find that these other countries, they provide cheap labor into those people that ultimately become Zama Zamas. So now, because they come from this foreign labor market into the South African labor market, and I'm talking now about the shadow economy. So these individuals are easily replaceable. This is easily replaceable labor. This is labor of which there is more supply than there is demand, which makes it easily replaceable. So when you know that and understand that, even if the SAPS were to arrest each and every Zama Zama that is here in South Africa today, the next day double the amount would be there to replace them. We've seen even from statistics as to with regards to nationality, we know that most of the labor comes from Lesotho. If you look into the Lesotho's economic profile, you find that it is a country of high inequality. There's unemployment in Lesotho. If you look at Lesotho's GDP per capita, it is on average 1,000 US dollars. That is almost about 19 to 20,000 rands. So then, and if you look at, you contrast that to South Africa, of which the GDP per capita here is about 7 to $6,000 US. That's quite a significant difference. So that country contributes then the most amount of labor. So then we have seen also what is currently happening in Riverlea. We have seen what happened in Krugersdorp. We have seen what has happened in Benoni, also in other parts of South Africa as well, such as the Northwest, in Matlosane, in other parts of Limpopo, where they do get arrested. Zama Zamas do get arrested. Their operations are disrupted. Their tools of trade material is confiscated. But soon thereafter, operations resume again as if nothing has happened. In fact, it becomes more intense. So, and also because if you look into the SAPS, if SAPS were to be the only resolution, there has been fiscal consolidation, austerity measures, cutting of its budget. It does not have enough resources. Therefore, it does not have enough capacity. So as and when you move resources around, it is hard to sustain them. You look into a country here that has Zama Zamas, that has the construction mafia, that has the coal mafia, the electricity mafia, drug dealers, organized crime. And these limited resources of SAPS have to take care of all those issues and more, and they're inadequate. So you can't then deposit resources permanently into one activity. They have to be moved around a lot. Hence, there's no sustainability when it comes to SAPS. So they just come, they do their operations, it's for PR, the media is there, it's watching, and then soon after, a month later, a couple of weeks later, those resources have to be redeployed somewhere. And what do Zama Zamas do? They return, and they return with more numbers.
It's most certainly a concerted effort that needs to take so many other departments in order for this to be curbed. And speaking of just the impact that it has on South Africa, because we do know that the infrastructure damage that's caused by illegal mining is now starting to truly show its ugly head in South Africa, from continuous sinking holes to damage of water infrastructure. I want us more to look into how lucrative this illicit business is and what the cost it is to the state when it comes to lost tax revenue as well as the exporting of gold.
All right, no, thanks. Because it's a two-part question, I'll start with the first part. So you find that there is undermining of the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act. Because when we talk about infrastructure regarding roads, water pipelines that get diverted to Zama Zama operations, the sinkholes that occur on roads, which is a critical economic infrastructure, and also other infrastructure as well, they get undermined due to Zama Zamas, and they cost the state a lot more to replace and to repair. And then also there's undermining of the Mineral Petroleum Development Act. There's undermining of the Precious Metals Act, because this act would assist also in prohibiting illegal acquisition of such resources or endowment or gold, in this case and context, possession, and also disposal. So those laws are undermined. Also other laws as well that speaks to the Criminal Procedures Act and so forth and so on. So that is one part. And then when we come to the economics of it, about an estimation of about 21 billion rands is lost in terms of tax revenue due to this activity of Zama Zamas. About 14 billion rand, estimated 14 billion rand in gold production is lost. And it is also tracked that 10% of this gold produce from Zama Zamas is destined for foreign markets. It's also interesting to note, because what usually SAPS does is they target the upstream or upstream production, and they target the labor in the upstream. So they do not have targeted programs for the entire value chain. So if here we are talking these numbers and these activities, that's just the shadow economy. But at some point, there is transition, meaning there is movement of that, let's say, gold in this context. It somehow, at some point, it moves into the formal economy. The money there moves at some point from the illicit economy or the shadow economy into the formal economy through money laundering. So if then there was a targeted or intelligence-driven effort that will look into the entire value chain, we would be able to curb it. And you can see there are serious leakages. I mean, if you're losing 21 billion rands because of this, that is a significant leakage. I may give an example. AGOA contributes about 20 to 60 billion rand to South Africans' revenue per annum. So if then Zama Zamas are leaking 21 billion. Just by closing them, you can even forgo AGOA. That's one example. South Africa is also a country that is currently grey listed because it has poor implementation of its financial laws, and in the case and context of prohibiting illicit capital flows, prohibiting money laundering. So these activities flow or take place without much interruption in such a country that is already grey listed because we are failing and we might potentially be blacklisted. So there's a lot of money here that circulates in this shadow economy, and then that money also at some point finds its way into the formal economy, and the produce thereof finds its way into the formal economy, because even proper or licensed mining houses, what they do is that they would reduce their capacity and supplement their capacity with Zama Zamas. Because Zama Zamas, remember, you don't pay a salary. Zama Zamas, you don't have to pay provident funds, occupational safety. So the cost of production is very low on that side. So then you can supplement here your formal production with this shadow production or illicit production in order to maximize your profits. So that's why when you start looking into the entire value chain, you'll be surprised that there are people that operate formally that will be found to be guilty or complicit of such, not just politicians, subs, and so forth, but even mining houses themselves. So it's quite interesting. And one day, when there's no PR and there's actual intervention that takes place, that's where you'll be surprised of the people that get arrested. But also, this is now getting into the space of recommendations. So the first recommendation should be that how do we de-incentivize people from coming into South Africa illegally and end up into the belly of the South African ground or soil, whatever. That is to ensure that the minimum living standards across the region in Africa are almost equal to South Africa. It incentivizes people. How do you do that? Foreign policy, for example. This month, there are elections taking place in Zimbabwe. What is the position of South Africa in Zimbabwe to ensure that Zimbabwe thrives as a country? And elections are critical to ensuring that Zimbabwe is stable, social, political, and economical. The South African government has no position. It is quiet. And if it intervenes, you de-incentivize Zimbabweans to move to South Africa illegally. You can even open borders. People won't be moving around JNJ because they are fine where they are. Artisanal and small-scale mining. Why are we not hearing much of that from our leaders in government? And this also speaks to the point that you made, multidisciplinary teams, because it can't only be SARS and the SANDF that must intervene here. That is not sustainable, and it will not work in the long run. Expedite the approval of mining processing licenses. It is said there is a huge backlog with applications at DMRE, Department of Minerals and Energy. Double down on security. As I said, austerity measures have weakened SAPS in so many ways, not just the poor management that is there. They are not adequately resourced, and they are critical, and we are seeing how critical SAPS is now. So then you have to ensure that they are properly capacitated, they are properly resourced, and then you can double down on security. Rehabilitate these mines, seal these open shafts. DMRE has been sleeping on the job. There are mines that have not been operating for some time, that were operating, licenses were in place, including the one that, remember, where the multiple rapes of the ladies took place in Krugersdorp. It was found that that mine is actually licensed and it belongs to someone but has not been operating for some time. So you ask yourself, why is the DMRE not providing adequate oversight, enforcement of regulations, of the acts and everything? So we need them to play their role as well. So rehabilitation of mines, it's their job. Sealing of the shafts, it's their job. Ensure cross-border movement. We know that we don't have proper cross-border movement or oversight thereof in South Africa. You can come in and out of South Africa as you wish without actually accessing or exiting from designated point of entry. Intelligence-driven interventions. So that would then assist that we do not only look upstream, but we also come downstream to say who actually buys these things, who are the buyers, who are the sellers, who are the people in logistics that move it from where this mineral is dug up until it reaches the marketplace as a final product. People must be arrested. So it can only be done when you have intelligence-driven interventions here, and there can be more recommendations. But once everything is done, it deals with a lot of issues: immigration, illegal mining in itself, our infrastructure. We close the leakages in our economy. We're able to now probably generate this 20 billion. It comes to the fiscals. It is able to be transferred to other areas or needs of government, find free education or something. So a lot needs to be done, but it cannot only be done by SAPS. And what the SAPS is currently doing now, even in Riverlea, it's just public relations.
Speaking about those recommendations, I hear you mentioning so many things, Bongani. Would formalizing Zama Zamas in South Africa help our economy? Is that not even an option?
You are not actually formalizing Zama Zamas, but you are ensuring that there is artisanal and small-scale mining. Because if we look into the profile of Zama Zamas, most of them are not even South African. But when you say artisanal small-scale mining, you are even targeting South Africans, because South Africans are not doing these things because they don't want to break the law. So then you are legalizing this mining at a small scale, because what we need to remember is that when a big corporate moves away from a shaft, it is not because there are no deposits left there or any endowment. It's just not enough quantity for commercial. And also, if you look into then the cost of production, it doesn't make sense from what they'll extract there. So they leave it as is. But then there are still things there, that deposits there. That's why we go for small-scale mining and artisanal, and we get our young unemployed South Africans, our unemployed women, to say, how can then we assist them, equip them, so they can enter into this market, they can enter into this space. And then we ensure that the money comes to South Africa, it circulates in South Africa, and then more people get jobs, more livelihoods are secured. So we are not saying these ones that are currently illegally mining right now, we are going to formalize them. No, we're not going to formalize them, because most of them, remember, are not even in the country legally. So they've already committed a crime by being here illegal. So you can't formalize them in terms of what they are doing without ensuring that they are here properly. But we ensure that for South Africa and South Africans, there is proper measures put in place. And this will also assist in ensuring that no one goes there, because there are already operations there, and there's proper security there, and there's also proper occupational health and safety. So people don't die from gas fumes there and other things, because now there are mafias operating there, they're killing each other and so forth. So we ensure that that space is not left unattended, but it is properly done, and it protects everyone. So we are just saying we legalize it, but targeted to South Africans. We are not legalizing the individuals there. We are just legalizing the mining, but at a small scale and artisanal level.
All right. Very briefly, Mr. Mahlangu, I mean, you speak of these big corporates who no longer find any commercial value within these mines, and they leave them as is. What is their role in rehabilitating these mines and ensuring that these Zama Zamas are then not given an opportunity to be able to go in and mine?
Thank you. So when you look into the legislative framework that looks into mining, their role is there, it's clear. If you are done, you probably rehabilitate. If you are done, you close a shaft. This is how you do it, so that you don't also compromise the environment. End. But then what then happens in South Africa is that these mining houses don't do as they are licensed to do, or they are authorized to do. But then they get away with it because the DMRE itself does not provide the adequate oversight, ensure that things are done by them, and they are done properly, and they are done according to specifications. So what they then do, they just exit, they just divest and disappear. And the DMRE cannot even track and trace them. And that's why I give the example of Krugersdorp, that according to the data that is there available from the DMRE, it is so-and-so that should be there and operating there. But that so-and-so has not been there for quite a long time. So you ask yourself, that is there proper monitoring and evaluation or tracking measures in the DMRE to ensure that we have 10 mines in South Africa. These 10 mines or 10 licenses, but out of the 10 licenses, actually 8 are operating. Out of the 8 that are operating, 4 are operating at full scale or optimally, and then 4 are not, they've downsized of reduced capacity due to the mineral extraction that they have, that it no longer, or it shows that it is decreasing. And these 4 mines are at risk of closure within a certain amount of time. And these are the interventions or the engagements that we must start having with the owners of that mine, people that we have licensed and must comply to our licenses. But because that does not happen, people just live as is. Up until then, it leaves an opportunity for Zama Zamas to come from wherever they come from in the world and occupy the space and make money out of the space and create leakages out of our economy. So the DMRE must also be pointed to say, when are you going to start doing your jobs? Because you are clearly sleeping on the job. They know what needs to happen. Even the sealing itself, you cannot just seal anyhow. There are ways in which you must seal a mine. There are ways in which you must rehabilitate a mine. And it's the DMRE that must ensure that everything is done, or maybe even the Department of Environment with the DMRE must ensure that things are done according to specifications. But because they are sleeping on the jobs, we have the problem that we have now.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mahlangu, for your time this evening. It certainly is a time that we need to come together as many forces within South Africa to ensure that we are tackling this issue of illegal mining. That was Mr. Bongani Mahlangu speaking to us there with regards to the recent spate of illegal mining that's happening in South Africa. Well,